Mark your calendars, everyone. November 2021 is the month that fans from across the globe will finally be able to start watching the first season of The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. Not only that, but for fans who watched the pre-recorded Comic-Con panel with Rafe Judkins, he had one final gift for us all, which was the first teaser poster for the show. Now, we weren't treated to any new footage during the 17-minute interview with Rafe, but that's not to say there wasn't any new interesting details to have been picked up from it. Now, I'm going to be going over all of those as well as the release date and the poster, so buckle up, it's going to be a long one. Let's start off with the major piece of information that we got from the panel, which was the November release date, and then we'll move across to the poster. So many of the cast took to their socials after the reveal of the release date just to comment on that and to obviously help spread and promote the news. But there was one really interesting post from our very own Alvaro Morte, which was a little bit more interesting to say the least. And here's what he had to say. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel this may have been a mistake on his behalf. If not, has he revealed the actual release date for the show? Well, only time will tell. But for the purpose of this video, let's take this at face value and say that it is indeed the day the show will air on. Now, there is one other huge clue that does help support this theory. And that is the November the 4th release date of the TV tie-in editions for The Wheel of Time. Now, whenever a show has been adapted to television, they generally release new TV tie-in editions of those books, generally between 2 to 3 weeks prior to the show airing. And so this would certainly put that November 21st release date within the same ballpark. But there is one slight problem with this release date, and that is we would have most likely an overlap with The Witcher Season 2. After finding out that Dune would be releasing in October, and the Season 2 of The Witcher would be releasing in December, the consensus from a great many of you was that we would be seeing a release date of November for the show. And this turned out to be true. They've completely bypassed any crossover with Dune, and they've only left themselves any issues with Season 2 of The Witcher to contend with. Now back to the mentioned November 21st release date. Say Amazon do go down that route and release it on that day, and they drop the first 3 episodes of the season. That would leave them with 5 episodes left to air across the next 5 Sundays. Now, what the problem here would be is there would be an overlap between The Witcher Season 2 and the final 2 episodes of The Wheel of Time. Now, do they want that to happen? Now, it could be that they want to get a small sample size of how the show would fare against the already established audience that the Season 2 of The Witcher would have. And so they don't mind this happening. It would give a good indication of how the show is faring and allow them to project some form of figures for what they could potentially see happening when Season 2 of the show comes around and present this to the stakeholders. But say they don't want that. That would mean the November 21st date is no longer a feasible day to launch the show on, and that would leave them with only 2 previous Sundays to potentially launch the show. Now, I only am saying Sundays because that November 21st date from Alvaro Morte is a Sunday, and so I'm basing it off of that. Now, they could release it on a Friday or any other day of the week for that matter, but I'm just going off of Sunday for this video. So that would leave them only 2 Sundays left prior to that 21st to launch the show, and then for the show to wrap up before the start of The Witcher. But it's just a matter of how they want to handle the show and whether they even care about what's going on with The Witcher to change their plans. So let's talk about that poster. Now, quite a few things have been cleared up that we as a fandom had some unanswered questions over from previous leaks that had happened over the course of the last year or two. as well as one other interesting detail that the poster might have given as a clue in regards to how the One Power might be portrayed on the show. So if you remember last year, a lot of us reported on the fact that a would-be passerby happened to stumble upon a set on one of their vacations or days out. Now, this set has what we didn't know at the time to be a waygate or portal stone, from what I could remember. There's a bit of back and forth between us all, but we settled on waygate. Now, with this poster reveal having the exact same object in the poster now with Rosamund Pike as Moiraine, we now have confirmation on exactly what that was, and that came thanks to the hidden text within the image. Here's a synopsis of what that said. The poster depicts an iconic moment from the Eye of the World. Moiraine, hint hint, Moiraine, standing beneath slowly moving clouds and wrapped in a blue cloak that is blowing in the wind with its hood down, looks over her shoulder at the audience as she steps through a waygate into the unknown. She is inviting us to go on a journey with her. And there's the confirmation of it being a waygate. Now, interestingly enough, there is in fact a full-size poster available on the Wheel of Time Twitter page that does shed a little bit more light on what was going on in that poster. Now, of course, when I first saw the poster, one of the things that I noticed outside of the more obvious things that stood out within it was there looked to be some sort of weaves that are used to channel the One Power in the lower left portion of it, with each different coloured weave representing one of the 5 powers. So now you're seeing that these weaves are coming from the darker side of the photo. It's a yin and yang, kind of how the Aes Sedai symbol is. So we could either take this as kind of symbolism for the show and not look too much into it of where they've placed the weaves on the dark side of the page. But if we did, and you interpret it that way, you would maybe feel and assume that it's more along the lines of matching sin. For me personally, even after seeing this hugely expanded poster, I still feel it's more along the lines of it being the weaves of the One Power. Now, all of this could just be the artist's creative and artistic license being put into this poster from the instructions they were given of what the team wanted to see out of it. So we could be reading far too much into this or far too little. But what do you guys reckon it is? Do you think it's, weaves of the One Power, as I think it is? Or do you think it's potentially matching sin because of it being on the darker side of the image? Now, I also can't not mention the fact that Rafe within this panel said that he had outlined what the show would look like and how it would end within the span of 8 seasons. Now, I think the fact that he outlined that is fantastic, because nobody wants another Game of Thrones on their hands. Now, I'm not talking about how the show ends, because thankfully the book series has already been written and completed. But I'm more talking along the lines of how messy and rushed things felt in that 8th and final season, with how they, closed up some character arcs, how they completely flipped certain characters. You all know who I'm talking about there. So, and we don't want to become angry at the pacing of it all. We want to have a fitting ending for the show and not for it to feel rushed and everything be let down by the final season. And so the fact that Rafe has already outlined in his head what he wanted to see as the whole plan, so to speak, of how these 8 seasons would be, I think is fantastic. Even if they do somewhat thanks to unforeseen changes or differences in opinions now that the show has been greenlit and we're moving on to the 2nd and 3rd seasons. But it's much better that they've already done that than not. Right everyone, well that's the end of the video. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Leave any comments that you do potentially have surrounding what we've discussed, and I will see you all next video.